So I picked a brush and I picked a color brown, not black or white, but a brownish color, and I'm just gonna brush a little bit. So if you notice here that the edges, the bottom edge, let me make this like this. So like the bottom edges here are darker than the middle of it. All right. So I'm just pressing the bracket key to make it bigger or smaller. And that's because of the flow here. This flow. It just means how much water is coming out of the brush. So if I take this, so that was with 100% flow. If I take the flow and make it smaller and brush again, there's less of an edge. See the edges on the bottom and the top where the water comes out? It's not as prominent. So in fact, let me change this down to 0 or as small as possible and brush. See how that's, in other words, the watercolor isn't flowing out of the brush hardly at all. Okay, so that's what flow means. So if I'm going to put this flow at 100%, I'm going to select all and delete, Command A and delete, and then press D to Command D to deselect. Now this opacity, it just changes transparency. So here is fully opaque. Oh, let me get a brown color again. Fully opaque, and here is transparent. Right, so that's what that does. So there are keyboard shortcuts to make this happen, and the keyboard shortcuts depends on this thing right here. This is called the airbrush attribute. So this airbrush attribute, see how it's kind of grayish? That means it's not on. So when it's not on, you can use the number keys at the top to change the opacity. So if you just press like a 12, there you go, the opacity changes to 12. If I press 25 or 35, there it is, opacity is 35. If I want to change the flow with the numbers, hold down the shift key and then type in, like, say, a 4. So shift with a 4 gives me 40%. Shift with a 7 gives me a 70%. So that's how I can change this if this thing is off. Now, once that thing is on, the airbrush attribute, if you have an airbrush, if you turn that on, then it's the opposite. So now if you just press numbers along the top, like say 5, flow becomes changed. So the flow is changed with the numbers. So if I want 65, 65, there it is. If I want to change opacity, now I hold down the shift key and I change the opacity to whatever I need. 90%, for example, or shift 7 for 70%. So this airbrush attribute depends on whether this is on or off, which will change for the shift key or the numbers. Okay, so that really helps. If you understand the keyboard shortcuts, then you're good to go.